if you will. And she's even getting in her business a little bit and meddling a little bit. Because recall that Ruth and Naomi, they're in trouble. They are destitute, they're desperate, their land has been sold off, Elimelech's passed on. And Naomi realizes that Boaz is a kinsman redeemer. So she comes along and she helps Ruth and says, hey, he's our kinsman. And maybe she even gives all the gist of the culture, how this works, how this plays out in Israel's term, because she was from Moabite. She was a Moabitish woman. So maybe she just spells out to her, this is exactly how it works. And Boaz is down on the threshing floor. And this is all the steps you need to do. And Ruth could have said, you know what, that's crazy. That's insane. I can't believe anybody do that or whatnot. She could have thrown up all these arguments, but she was submissive. And keep in mind, as she's a new convert. She's a new Christian in many ways. Now, they didn't know of Christ, didn't they? But she's new to all this. And yet she's walking. She's walking with God. And tonight, what we want to get to is there's a time when Ruth just has to be still. Look at verse 18. We'll go back and we'll look at some of this further. But I'll read this verse. It'll be our main text here. It says in verse 18, then she said, sit still, my daughter, until thou know how the matter will fall. For the man will not be in rest until he hath finished the thing this day. Be still. That's hard. That's a struggle. Okay? Say, well, who's that a struggle for, preacher? Well, look at the person next to you, if there's a person next to you. Look at the person behind you. Look at the person in front of you. We all struggle with being still. We all want to fix things, especially us men. We can try to be fixers. There's a problem, honey, I'll fix it, you know. Or maybe just avoid it. Either way, but we want to fix things. When we see a problem, we want to come along and we want to piece it all together. You think in your mind and you think of the solution to a certain problem. Sink's broke or whatever, men, you know. Ladies, maybe you have some problem and you're like, you know, what's the fix here? What can I do? And you think it over and there's nothing you can do. If you can get that door, Michael, got somebody want to come in. So you want to fix the situation. You want to help it, right? That's what we want to do. We want to fix the situation. Don't we oftentimes? But there's sometimes in the spiritual walk that we just can't fix it. Sometimes we just have to be still. And we're not the solution. Sometimes we have to let God work it out. I mean, it's hard. It's hard for us at times to be still. I mean, at work sometimes, and we work with planes. And the planes, when they're late, which there's a lot of things that can cause a plane to be late. You think about it. You know, if there's ice on the runway, if there's rain, if the situation isn't just right, the airplane can't land. And when we have to come in at the same time, 6 o'clock, 6:30, you know, backed up to start time, we used to have to come in at 5 or whatever, 4 o'clock. But when the plane's not there and you have to work, what are you doing? Just sitting around and waiting. And waiting. That's hard sometimes. Now, what's nice is I can pull out my phone and study a little bit. I'm sitting there on the job and get paid to do so. That's kind of nice. But we don't like waiting. There's times when God says, wait. You can't handle this. You have to just pray and give it over to God. Sometimes we have to quit struggling. I mean, we love when we pray and we get it. Yes, Lord, that's it. God tells us yes. Sometimes we even do like the no because at least we've got an answer. But it's hard when we pray and God says slow or grow. Could be that that's what you get, but you have to wait a little while. Back up to verse 7. We'll look at the verses where we've been and see where we're going. Verse 7 says, when Boaz had eaten and drunk and his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of corn, and she came softly and uncovered his feet and laid her down. And it came to pass at midnight that the man was afraid and turned himself, and behold, a woman lay at his feet. So here's Ruth. She's come to the threshing floor. She's met up with Boaz, and as you can imagine, Boaz is startled and scared because there's somebody at his feet, and lo and behold, it's Ruth. It came past at midnight that the man was afraid and turned himself, and behold, a woman lay at his feet. Verse 9, he said, "Who art thou?" And she answered, "I am Ruth, thine handmaiden. Spread therefore thy skirt over thine handmaiden, for thou art a near kinsman." She was glad to find the kinsman, and this is what she tells him. Now that's where we left off. This is where we'll pick up. What I see here, some things from the text here that I want to see that I just want to point out is first, we'll see that Ruth, she was separated. Verse 10 says, this is Boaz talking at first, and he said, "Blessed be thou of the Lord, my daughter, for thou hast showed more kindness in the latter end than at the beginning, insomuch as thou followest not young men, whether poor or rich." She had separated herself. Her eyes were only on Boaz. You see, I believe this from the bottom of my heart. God is not a respecter of persons. The Bible lays that out very clearly. He's not a respecter of persons. But nevertheless, we wouldn't say He plays favorites. But I'm here to tell you He does have intimates. I use this as an illustration many times. He had 12 disciples. But how many was He really, really close with? How many? Three. I mean, you can see it. Peter, James, and John. They go up into the mountain. Jesus goes up at the mountain. And you remember the Mount of Transfiguration? Matthew chapter 7, I believe. No. I don't think it was Matthew chapter 7. Anyways, it's in the Bible, okay? It's there somewhere. I just forget the exact text. But they go up into the mountain, okay? And Jesus takes who? Peter, James, and John. Now, on the other side, not in the mountain, is how many disciples? 9. I was checking to see if y'all were awake. Some of y'all weren't awake. I just woke you up just then trying to make it count. 9 disciples. Okay, you're one of those 9. The other 3 have just gone up there. What's going in your head? Well, why does Peter get to go up there? Well, Big Mouth always sticks his foot in his mouth. Why is he up there? John, James. I mean, they came along and they said they want to be right on Jesus' right hand. You know, I don't know what was going on down at the mountainside. Well, why did He have those 3 and not the rest? Or in the garden, right? When they go in the garden. They're in the garden and Jesus commands them to pray, but He goes off a little distance and there He has Peter, James, and John. And the rest are in a different spot. Why yet again? He's not playing favorites, but He does have His intimates. He has those that wanted to walk closer with Him. And you have the other 9 that distanced themselves. And that's what happens with God and His blessings. He loves everybody the same. He has the same love for all the world. But yet some people mess out on the blessings that God has because they don't get close enough with God. Why do some people not accept salvation and some do? It's because they've chosen to accept Christ. Why do some people, you may look across the way and you may see certain people's homes, you may see certain people's lives, and you may wonder, why do they have some of the blessings of God upon their lives? Could be because they walk closer with God. And sometimes we just have to quit looking around and just look up. Just look at God and see His face. But God has the invitation. We just have to accept it. He said He's standing at the door knocking. You open the door. He'll come in and He'll sup with you. But many times we don't invite God enough into our homes. We don't invite God enough into our church. We don't invite God enough into our life. And then we sit and wonder, why doesn't God bless me? Because we don't invite Him enough. We don't make Him feel welcomed and wanted enough. But she had separated herself. While that we know from the text here, it's been pretty obvious that Boaz has had eyes for Ruth. Did anybody else catch that we've been going through this? Mm-hmm. He has. He's had eyes for Ruth. But as she's coming up, she's saying, I only have eyes for you. Because read it from the text, and this is another, you've heard me say, I believe that Boaz is older than Ruth. This is another point from what we just read. He said to her that blessed be thou the Lord, my daughter, for thou hast showed more kindness in the latter end than in the beginning. Insomuch that thou followest not young men, whether poor or rich. There's all these young fellows out in the field working. You've not followed them. You've been chasing an old man, Boaz. But he was the kinsman redeemer. Not only was she just chasing him, but he had what she needed. He could restore the family. And several commentaries have believed that, and I don't just read commentaries and just say they're the final authority, but the Word of God is, but several commentaries believe that he was an older person, and we could say that from this. But as well we could say from verse 10, this is, again, my reading into it a little bit, I'll admit it. I would say, based on verse 10 as well and some of the other texts, I'd say Ruth was actually an attractive woman. I don't know what she would have looked at. But I'd say, based on some of this too, that she would have been slightly a good-looking woman. And Boaz, it's obvious that he only has eyes for her. But also, along with Ruth, she only has eyes for him. There's a singleness of heart. And husbands and wives and families need a singleness of heart. As a husband myself, I need a singleness of heart. Don't only look at my wife, right, Brother Mike? Only look to her. That's what God has given me in my life. We need a singleness of heart. Ladies, you need a singleness of heart. But you know, even more than the significant other in our lives, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, we need to have our eyes fastened on our heavenly Boaz, which is Jesus Christ. We need to have a singleness of heart. Philippians 3:10 says this, Paul talking, that I may know him, and the power of his resurrection, the fellowship of his suffering, being made conformable unto his death. Paul is saying here, I want to know Christ. And that's an experiential knowledge to get to know him in a close and intimate way. Not just know some facts about God. There's some people today in the church house know some facts about God. They can tell you some things about the Trinity. But do you know what it's like to walk with God? To have a relationship with God? There's people that are lost in this world that yet can tell you how to be saved. They have it up here. But they don't have an experiential knowledge of salvation. We need an experiential knowledge of salvation. We need an experiential knowledge of fellowship. You see, Paul had a singleness of heart. He wanted to get to know Christ even closer. And then as you read on in verse 13, it says, Brethren, I count not myself to have apprehended, but this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forth into those things which are before. He had a singleness of heart. He had a focus there that we can tell in verse 13. Just like a runner that's set for the finish line, he had a focus. He said, I'm going to forget those things which are behind. I'm going to press forward. Those things which are before. He realized at the same time he hadn't arrived. Sometimes we can get in church and we can be in there for a little while. We can be faithful, which is always a good thing. It's always good to be in the church and be in there for years. But sometimes, if we're not careful, preacher, pastor, person, whoever you are tonight, you can think, well, I've heard it before. It's easy to think, well, I have the answers. And it's easy to start thinking, you know what? I've arrived. Regardless of what your GPS tells you when you reach your location, you know what it tells you, right? You've arrived, right? Regardless of what that tells you, you haven't arrived yet. Till we look at Jesus' face and he says, well done, thou faithful servant. We haven't arrived. So we need to continue to run our race. We need to have a resolve about us. That's what I see with Ruth, that she was resolved. She'd been told this is what you need to do by Naomi, but she had the resolve to follow through with it. And she had the resolve to just focus and center herself on Boaz. She was separated. She had a reputation as well. Verse 11, and now, my daughter, fear not. I will do to thee all that thou requirest. For all the city of my people doth know that thou art a virtuous woman. She had a reputation. She had a good reputation. In Titus 2:7, it talks about a pattern of good works and all things, showing thyself a pattern of good works and doctrine, showing uncorruptness, gravity, sincerity. We need to have a good reputation. Yeah, I know we live in a day and age which people say, it doesn't matter what so-and-so thinks. And some of that's true. The fear of man bringeth a snare. But we do trust in the Lord. And at the same time, I as a pastor and as a person don't want to see a brother stumble because I'm not doing what's right and have a wrong reputation. And I definitely don't want to see somebody go to hell because of my actions. So we've got to make sure we have a good reputation. I want to have a good reputation in this community as a church. I was glad to talk to some of our neighbors earlier. They had to work at a van situation. We had some things with the van go on, and I went across and was talking to a neighbor over here, and was telling him, man, what a good church we have. Don't we? Some we have good people. And he could say nothing but good. He said he waved at every person that drove by. It seems like we do have good people. And I approve that message. I believe we have some good people. I want to have that kind of reputation in the community. I don't want to be known for a church that's WWE SmackDown every service, right? Don't want to be known for a church that's been as unfriendly as I'll get out, and I don't believe that to be our church. I believe that anybody that walks in, get their hand probably shook off and get loved on. And if they're not seeing things, well, sometimes people can just be picky, can't they? Well, the choir might have sounded off key every now and again, and I mean, we want to have a professional sounding choir, don't get me wrong, but some people come in just looking for problems. Oh, a preacher didn't shake my hand. I'm sorry, I tried to shake everybody's hand, but it may not happen in the service, But I do want us to have a good reputation. And Ruth, she had a good reputation. Boaz said, it's known that we're a virtuous woman. She had a great reputation. Something we ought to side for. She was separated. She's seen the blessings of God. Psalms 84:11 says this, for the Lord God is his sun and shield. The Lord will give grace and glory. No good thing will he withhold from them that walk uprightly. See, as I said before, God doesn't play favorites, but he sure does have his influence. Let me read that verse off for you again. No good thing will he withhold from them that walk uprightly. Did you get that? When we walk with God, man, the blessings just flow. We walk close to him. We walk uprightly. See, she was separated. But, notice number 2, there's a setback. All along, the plan's been working. Right? As we've read it up to this point. Naomi said, you go on down to the threshing floor, and this is what you do. This is some of the cultural thing. She goes on down. There's Boaz. She cautions herself. Everything's been just running right together, right? Love when a plan comes together, right? It's kind of like when you got a water hose running and the water's just flowing and everything, and you're at the other end of the spigot, nothing's coming out. You say, well, the water was just flowing. Then you get to look and there's a kink in the hose, right? Or you're at work and you're working the factories, or like Brother Mike, you're driving your truck and it's just going right along and everything's fine, hunky-dory, and then you have a flat tire. How many of those you have, Brother Mike? Not many. Okay, so that's good. Or you're working with a piece of machinery and suddenly a wrench in the mechanism. There went the plan, There goes the whole day fixing on things rather than making progress, right? Y'all with me here tonight? Mm-hmm. This is kind of what it's like. Man, everything's been flowing. The plan's been working. But there's a problem. Verse 12. And now it is true, here's Boaz talking, that I am thy near kinsman. Albeit, there's a kinsman nearer than I. Whoa, ruh-roh. Everything's been good. Hunky-dory. You're riding the bike along, and everything's just flowing, then somebody throws a stick in the spokes, and then you're off, right? That's what happened there. Did y'all get that? Here's the deal. Here's Boaz, and he's a kinsman. Check that off. But there's a nearer kinsman. The problem is that he'd have, if you say, first dibs, because he was the closer. Now think about this for a minute. This is time out here on the play. We read through this, and we could just go into chapter 4, and we could just say, but that's not how it all works out, now how it all boils down. You know what Boaz could have said? Man, I love her. She's cute. She's pretty. She likes me. We could just fandangle this thing and make it work. I don't know about y'all, but I was reading through that. That's kind of what I was thinking. I don't know if y'all ever thought about that, but he could have just tried to pull one on everybody and say, you know what? I know that might be saying what the law says, what the culture says of the day, but nobody has to know about that. And maybe nobody will even know that there's a near kinsman. But let's just pull a fast one on everybody. Let's hoodwink everybody. Let's just do this. I mean, I like you and you like me. It's all legitimate here. It's all good. But instead, he has to do a little waiting. As we'll see, he goes along and tries to make the thing right. You know, I've seen some young people, and they just like each other, committed. They even get engaged. And they say, we're going to get married. You know what ends up happening? They have sex. And they say, we're going to get married. We're not going to be with anybody else. Get engaged. We're going to walk down the aisle. Why wait? And I've seen it to where they don't wait. I've even seen it to where they have sex and then the relationship even dissolves later. So, until you actually walk down the aisle, till the ring's on the finger, till the I do's are said, you're not married. Wait. See, he could have tried to manipulate the situation, turn around for his own self, but he wanted to do things right. I mean, we could go to other illustrations and use it. You know, we try to cheat and steal and lie to work for our own good. But says, you know what, I'm going to follow through. This is what God has. I'm going to trust Him. That's what we have trouble with sometimes. So it's trusting God and His plan that He'll work it out. That His way is best. I'm like y'all too, by the way. The flesh pulls on me too. Hey, if one of the most godly men in all of the Bible, next to Jesus Christ, I'd say, most Christian-oriented person, you could say, says, I struggle with the flesh, the Apostle Paul. Says, I struggle with the flesh. You know what? I'm not near where the Apostle Paul is. I'm struggling with the flesh. Got to realize where we're all at. We struggle with this flesh. We got to fight the good fight. Keep at it. It says in verse 13, continue on reading here, tarry this night, that should be in the morning, that if he will perform unto thee the part of a kinsman, well. Now let me just pause. The well there, that he seems to say that. If the other person that's closer, if he'll perform the part well. Now, we just read that and we can't see Boaz's facial response. You know, we can't see the body language when he says that. But I don't know about y'all, but I think when he said that well, I think it was kind of a half-hearted. If there's another one closer, and if he does his part, well, you know, that's good. But he's really jumping in his heart. This she comes along and marries me. I want her. Right? You know, I don't know what's going on exactly in his head. Y'all know I'm a little crazy and weird anyways. So, I don't know if that's what's going on, but I believe it was. Let him do the kinsman part. But if he'll not do the part of the kinsman to thee, guess who's next in line, right? Then will I do the part of the kinsman to thee, as the Lord liveth, lie down into the morning. Saying, I'm next in line, if things don't work out. He says, no, I'm next in line. We'll find out. Boaz, he didn't get to be rich because he was dumb, okay? He got where he was at because he was a savvy businessman, and he knew what he was doing even in this case. But he said, lie down till the morning. Verse 14, she lay at his feet until the morning, and she rose up before one could know another. And he said, let it be known that a woman came in, let it not be known that a woman came into the floor. You see, he wanted to protect and help her reputation. Well, that she had a good reputation, he cared enough about her to retain the reputation. It just shows us again, you know, we have to be concerned for the reputation that we have and that we keep it. And that we try to walk with the Lord and make sure that, not that we do it as a display, but make sure that we're living right before God. And verse 15 says, also he said, bring the veil that thou hast upon thee, and hold it. And when she held it, he measured 6 measures of barley and laid it on her. and she went into the city. Now 6 measures of barley. Now if you remember chapter 2, she'd been working all day long, and she worked for barley. And she had taken back home and had 5 days worth, give or take, worth of barley there. But it says here that he gives her 6 measures, and I looked at this, and that's 2 ephahs. So maybe it could have been roughly 10 days worth of supply. This was 2 times where she'd worked a whole day for. He just gives her. Now that's quite a pack when you think about it. Wrapped it up maybe in, as it mentions, a veil. May have just taken some clothing and wrapped it up and threw it on her back and said, "Going home, girl." And man, she was probably carrying that with a heavy load as she went on back. It's quite a bit of barley as she goes on taking. And she goes on home, and of course she shows it to Naomi, as we'll see. But along with that, when we see the separation, we see this setback that there's a near kinsman. What I also want to notice is instructions to be still. Verse 16, when she came to her mother-in-law, she said, "Who art thou, my daughter?" Now, commentators believe when she's saying that she's basically asking, "How are you?" Or "How did that go?" Now, some commentators have said that when she said that, it could have been in the dim twilight, and maybe she couldn't see Naomi. Now, however way you want to slice it up, I'm going to use my little imagination here. Not big, but little imagination. That maybe she's asking, "Well, how did it go? Are you Mrs. Boaz or not?" You know, I don't know. But nevertheless, she asked this question, "Who art thou, my daughter?" And she told her all that the man had done to her. So she explained everything and how the day went and even the setbacks, how she separated herself, looked unto Boaz, but the setback. So he explains it all. And I kind of, like I said, I think that it's more like, how did everything go? Because of Ruth's answer. Verse 16, and she told her all that the man had done to her. So she explained everything. Then Naomi imparts some instruction as we read in verse 18. Then said she, "Sit still, my daughter, until thou know how the matter will fall. For the man will not be in rest until he have finished the thing this day." Ruth could no longer do anything further. She'd gone and she, in a nutshell, proposed. She'd submitted herself, said, "Put your skirt over me." She'd done everything that she needed to do. But now everything is out of her control. The ball is no longer in her court. She's done what she could. Did you see all that? Would you agree with that statement? She's done all that she could do. Made the propositions. She says, "I want you to be my kinsman redeemer. You're a near kinsman. I'd like you to redeem me. I'd like to marry you." In a nutshell. She's done all she could. And Naomi comes along and she gives her some good instruction here. All you can do is be still. But I like how she doesn't stop either. She says, because that man Boaz, he's not even going to rest until he works this out. Now, we look into the next chapter, and that's exactly what happens. He doesn't sit down. While that Ruth has to sit there and be still, maybe twiddling her fingers, maybe worried, concerned. I don't know what's going on in her mind. But isn't it true in our lives, kind of thought about this, that we get tore up inside and out with things we can't change? Isn't that true? We grow these ulcers, we get these headaches, and we get all strung out on things we can't do anything about. Things that are out of our hands. Preacher, the economy! What's going to happen? Preacher, the government! Preacher, the world! Preacher, fill in the blank! With things we can't change, but yet we get all worried about. And God says, be still. Pray on it. Do what you can do. In that you can pray. Just be still. See, in this time, she needed to surrender. She needed to surrender and let go and let God. And that's what we have to do, is surrender. That takes self-control. That takes sometimes our hands off a situation. Sometimes God says don't do it because you'll make a mess of it. You just sit back and you let me take care of things. Be still and know that He is God. You find that in Exodus. Come up to the Red Sea. It said, be still. Find in our lives when things are out of our control and God says, be patient. Sit still, my son. I have 3 children. I know what it's like to say, sit still in church. Legs are kicking. Arms are moving. You know, sit still, be patient. But we're like that too. And God says, be patient. We see Abraham and Sarah should have been patient and waited. God wanted the lineage and the line to be through Sarah. But they made a mess of things because they weren't patient and sat still and waited for the promise of God. And they bring Hagar into the mess. Make a big mess of things. That continues on to this day, by the way. But see, being still, waiting on God takes trust. Takes trust. Takes trust for God to come through when we've got sickness, got ailments, when we've got spiritual sickness, when we've got a loved one. It's at outs. We got things going on. God says, be still. Be still. Know that I am God. Sometimes we want to just leave. Sometimes we want to leave the church. Sometimes we want to leave reading off the Bible. God says, be still. Be still. Know that I am God. That's one of the hardest things for us to do. When we know the solution, we know how to take care of the situation, that's a little easier. We still got to do the work. By the way, just because a person sits still doesn't mean there's not work involved. There's still work to be done. There's some things we have to be still on. And just let God take care of the situation. Go in there, you may make a mess of things. God says, just be still. Let me take care of this. You don't work at this. You just pray. You send up prayers my way. You just be still while I take care of it. Let's pray. Dear Father, I thank you for this evening, God. I thank you for this message that we can see from the book of Ruth at the end of the chapter. Here it's a call for us again, and one of those things that we find very hard, but you tell us to do at times, to just be still, trust in you, rest in you, and wait on you to take care of things, God. So I pray that you'd be in our church. I pray that you continue to grow it. I pray that you continue to help. Help with healing, spiritual healing, physical healing, God. Help in those areas, and help us to be patient with you, God. Wait on you, that you'll take care of things. Lord God, be with this Sunday morning service. Be with it as it comes up. And I pray that you bring in people. I pray that you bring in the lost. Help them to be saved. God, I pray that you bring in those that are away, that they may be restored. And God, bring in our faithful folk and bring them in. And be with those that are sick. I think of Amy and Lewis and their family. Be with them with their sickness, God. And just continue to wrap your arms around our church and show your love, God. And I appreciate the love they showed to me. Go with us, God, and be with us in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Well, anything else?